approved bylaws. Some, they're not in here.
For the planning commission?
Yes. We need those. Let me
Yeah,
make
I
a
have
note.
what, all I have is what we worked on. And then
Council would have those in their packet. but
Okay. We look for them now, or
Do you need to know?
No.
Okay. No, later's fine. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are we ready?
Think so.
Okay. No, it's fine. We were waiting on this. Just to get up and running. Anyway, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. We want to do a roll call for the minutes.
Do you need us to review?
You good?
I don't know if anyone's on there.
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay. Does everybody have a copy of the minutes from February 9th?
Yes.
Look over those, okay, they were emailed to us anyway.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February.
My dog.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion carries. Let's look at item number 3, the comprehensive plan. Did everybody have a chance to look over the plan? Hopefully by now. We've had it for, well, since forever, but we've had a physical copy for several months. And there's a lot to it, but I think for tonight's purposes, as I'm going through, there really is a lot of objectives in the action plan that have been accomplished, which is really awesome.
Especially in like the last 24 months.
Yeah. And so chapter 4 gives all of the action plan. And as I was just going over and looking at, what we've actually done, some of it, some of it hasn't been done, but a lot of it has. And that's kind of exciting to see that there has been action taken on it. And that means we're working the plan, so that's good. It also means that as we renew and look to renew the plan, that we're able to move forward and not really just look at the same things. That's good too. Hi, Victoria. Is there any, I hate to open it up just so generally, but is there anything that as you're reading over that you have any questions on or comments concerning the comprehensive plan?
I mean, I generally think that there needs to be more specific objectives so that they're more measurable going forward. But I mean, that's something, I guess, as the group and as the public gives us some feedback on it, we can make that decision. But I feel like it would be nice to have more clear objectives rather than very general, broad objectives. I get the comprehensive plan as a broad plan, but they're so broad that, you could kind of throw a dart.
Okay.
So if they could just be, I don't think we need to have finite objectives. I just think a little more,
Well,
a little more specific or even timeline related or something that gives us something to measure to.
right.
Because 10
Well,
years,
there is a timeline attached to the plan of a general time in which the commission and the council were to try to aim for to accomplish. But as you say, you're quite right. A great deal in the plan has been accomplished. It's been a relatively successful plan in that way. I think some of the more important and vital programs have been worked out and implemented, and that's all to the good. And so, I think onward and upward, as they say, and looking to improve on it further.
Well,
here we start.
but also when you're doing something for the first time, and it's something so complex, now renewing it and looking at it, having something to compare it to. We had nothing to compare it to September of 14. So I think that we'll be able to really focus in more more so this time around.
Even if it's just like measurable reviews of the plan, like quarterly throughout those 10 years. And you
Right.
go back and you reassess. I know we're supposed to do that anyway, but the supposed to is, there's not like a report that was done like every 2 to 3 years to say, hey, this is what they did from a planning perspective, saying like just, whether it's from this commission or the city or whoever, but just saying like, hey, this is where we're at 2 years in. This is what we're not, just so that we're kind of having like a check-in. Like,
Yeah.
I know that it's sort of baked in there assumptively, but it'd just be nice to have some kind of tool.
I agree. Okay, anything else?
I think that was my main comment, and I guess, I know it speaks a little bit about housing in the comprehensive plan, but I mean, that's just something on I would like to see us get more specific, with what we're trying to accomplish in that realm of the city, if anything, I guess, or what we think we should be trying to accomplish.
Both the housing and the facades, this description in there is fairly vague,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. And looking at the needs assessment, and if we're okay to move on to that SWOT assessment, yeah, I think it's in appendix 1 of the comprehensive plan. Basically,
Do you mind if I ask a question? When you talk about having a discussion about SWOT, are you talking about in terms of the city itself, the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities,
basically
threats to the
as
city in terms of assessing?
basically as it's in the comprehensive plan. Again, they're on appendix 1, the Weston Comprehensive Plan first public meeting, the strengths, opportunities, challenges, threats.
Right.
So yes, as it pertains to the city, as it pertains to the planning.
So there's a problem with that. I'm grateful for the problem. It allows me to emphasize probably one of the most important factors that you're going to have to deal with over the next several months. Before you can take up that discussion, you first have to have the public weigh in at that public meeting that you're planning for. Public participation, public contribution to those subjects must be received first.
But where did you find that? Because the law clinic specifically said it was a good idea to, at our thing that we just went to, they basically said as a team, we should have our own SWOT assessment kind of thing. And
Well,
see how
no,
we
that's true.
did.
That's nothing wrong with that. But,
That's what we're talking about.
well, the land use planning statute is very clear. You must always include public participation in the processes that you're looking to discuss and decide.
Right, so the way that they had worded it was what we should do as a team is have a SWOT and see how, and then have our public meeting and see if our ideas are in line with what the public thinks and kind of be able to compare those two side by side. That was what
But you
they
don't know what
said.
the public thinks until you question the public.
Right, they told us to do our SWOT and then have our public meeting and have kind of that same board of questions on what they thought the strengths and weaknesses and stuff was. That was what I took from what they had stated at the.
You can decide how you want to set up the public meeting and what questions you want to ask the public or throw out to them. But if you don't do the public participation first, and instead you're looking to discuss substantively what you all think the SWOT of Weston is at this time, you've left out the public.
This is a public
No.
meeting.
No, we're not leaving out the public at all. In fact, I mean, it's on our agenda to establish those public meetings.
No, I mean that, but public meetings have to come first for a given topic.
So the statute says we have to have all public meetings before we can discuss it here at this meeting?
You're talking about public participation. The statute is very clear that you must include public participation in the process of undertaking to decide the various issues that are going to make up the comprehensive plan.
Right, so there was,
And by not doing it, by jumping the vote and trying to come to conclusions yourselves about what SWOT is.
I don't think that there's a conclusion.
Well, that's the question, though. I mean, if you're looking to simply set up a process by which you can, at the public meeting, you ask the public about SWOT,
That's what it would be, yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Then after you've had the public meeting, you've taken notes at that public meeting as to what the public has said about SWOT.
Right.
Then you are free to come back into the subsequent meeting of the commission, and you can actually substantively take up the question of SWOT, and you can come to conclusions about what
So-
Weston SWOTs are.
So the reason they described doing it the way they had described it is because they said that you might find if doing it the way that they had described was coming in here, having this meeting, talking about what we thought they were, holding our public meeting, they said, you're gonna maybe find that your idea of what the public wants is very different than what you think it is. But if we have that meeting, we're gonna hear what the public wants, and we're no longer going to have that objective opinion to be able to compare what we think and what the public
Do,
thinks.
do you have,
That,
do you have that statute handy?
yeah, just because that's what, I mean, that was how they described doing the exercise. They basically set us up in the, in the conference and said, that was their recommendation. So I'm just kind of confused, like, so, and I don't have an issue with doing the public meeting first and then coming back and having a SWOT here. I just think that what they were stating was that our eyes will be colored by that public meeting versus what we truly think are those problems. Like if we just sat down and individually, I mean, maybe we don't do it at the meeting, maybe we each individually submit our own 30 minutes before the public meeting and fill out our own, if that's how it needs to be done. But once we all sit through that meeting and talk to the public, we're not necessarily gonna have our own views of what those problems are, right?
No, you're going to, be inspired perhaps to some extent by some of the views of the public, but ultimately you are the decision makers. You are the judges of what is the SWOTs of the city. But by first, getting the public to weigh in on that, you have a much fuller panorama of perspective that is designed to both inspire and force you to also think a little bit harder and how certain things are connected, and it can be a more comprehensive overview of SWOT.
I guess the question that I have is, well, I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what it harms, but I want to see legally, we're not allowed to discuss amongst ourselves what the issues of Weston is before we hear the public. Because we're not making an analysis here. We're not making.
Well, that's what, if you're not making an analysis, you're not coming to set conclusions about what SWOT is.
No.
Then that's fine, but you're aiding, in other words, the public meeting that you're going to have with the public.
Right, but because that is the next thing on the agenda is to set
Those dates.
those dates and to have those questions of what that meeting's going to look like. I haven't been to a public meeting like that. I don't know if any of the.
I look for zoning.
Okay. And Bruce, I'm assuming you were there. Sure. During the planning commission, or during the comprehensive plan. So I'm interested to hear kind of the structure of the meeting and everything like that. But my thoughts for our purposes here today are to have we have our own opinions about that assessment. And as Anna said, we're just comparing that. We're not taking our own assessment and running with it. What we're doing is establishing the public meetings that will come, set date, place, time, all of that. So this is just a discussion on the SWOT.
Maybe, and if it needs to be done in reverse, which like isn't how they explain the exercise, but if it needs to be done in reverse, maybe what we do is we do some sort of questionnaire. People don't tend, we saw how well the written questionnaires go. Half of us didn't even fill them out at the conference,
sure.
right? But we could do some kind of questionnaire with those, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and just very broad. What are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, just simply asking those and let them freehand write those in. And then after we've had that public meeting, where then whatever the continuation of that public meeting is, we then basically fill out that questionnaire separately ourselves, just like as if we were the public, and analyze them all together. I mean, I don't think there's any harm in that either.
Can we do a survey monkey experience for people who don't want to attend the meetings?
Yes.
so we can
I think
still
we do
gauge?
both.
Yeah,
That's my thought.
I think we get more input that way.
Yeah.
And maybe more quality input. A lot of times people don't feel comfortable talking in public, but they'll write you a novel on what they think.
So how many public meetings are we required to have for the comprehensive plan?
Well, you're going to have meetings with all the other city boards and commissions.
I'm just talking about the public. We have that on the schedule as well. I'm talking about just to invite the public to come in and air,
Kind
their,
of got a citywide.
a
public meeting.
citywide public meeting.
To have the first one as you have it is fine. It's good to start out that way, and I agree with SWAT being the foundation that you want to first lay. That's all fine. Subsequently,
It looks like there was two here. There's a first public meeting and a final public meeting result.
well, the process at the very end, when you're having formally submitting the comprehensive plan to the council for its consideration, there's a back and forth that can go between the commission and the council at that point.
Is
But
that what
prior-
the final public meeting
Yeah.
was?
That would have been, well, yes, but before that, you're going to do at least 2 open house meetings.
That's
Uh,
basically what I was told when I asked that question at the,
You're- The reason for that is at a certain point, again, it has to do with that requirement of involving the public.
I guess that's my question, Bruce, involving the public. How many meetings, a number, how many meetings do we need to have? That's.
they didn't give me a hard answer. They did say that 2 was kind of what a lot of
Okay.
communities did,
In
but they
terms
said a
in
lot.
terms of citywide meetings, but you're gonna have an awful lot of
That's right.
small meetings.
Yes, sir.
You're gonna have
I'm
like, neighborhood meetings.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
but basically there'll be 2 open house meetings. And the purpose of those meetings is you have those when you have gotten to the point of having gotten a fairly good idea of what you're going to want to put into the revamped plan. And the purpose of the meetings is to share your still tentative thinking at that. You haven't come to any final conclusions, but to share that tentative thinking with the public, allowing them to pass on what they think of those ideas. And you can use like a questionnaire, allowing them to make comments about that.
Did you all use a questionnaire?
Yeah, it was a questionnaire. It was also an open meeting where people were free to get up and talk and
Do
so
you
forth.
have a copy of that?
Well, the questionnaire materials, let's see. I think you can probably find them in the appendices of the comprehensive plan itself. I don't know.
I did not see it.
If not, I can email it.
Would you, that would be helpful. That'd be great.
I see, it looks like you've got some of the polling there.
I just have the first public meeting, and again, it goes through the strengths, opportunities, challenges, threats, mapping station, and then the final public meeting. I didn't see the questionnaire in here. So if you had, I think that would be helpful to go off of. Sorry you had to sit through all that. I should have,
I've been muted this whole time.
are you serious?
I just unplugged myself.
That's funny. Victoria, are you there?
I'm here.
Were we on mute the whole time?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Well, not the whole time, but maybe like a few minutes in. I just assumed, and I was kind of going in and out, so I assumed maybe you guys had gone into like executive or something and muted it.
Yeah.
Executive failure to push play.
Executive failure to push the right buttons, yeah. All right, we're,
Sorry.
that's okay. We wanted to hear from you on the Fulcrum grant and what's going on with that, because it really does fit in with some of the issues of the comprehensive plan on the walkability. That was a huge issue, so.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when I was hearing you guys speak at the beginning. I thought that this was really good timing to kind of be, I guess, just talking to you guys about it and seeing how we can make the most of it. So the Fulcrum, first of all, I'm Victoria Stansberry. For those of you who don't know, I'm with Lewis County Blueprint Community. We have a couple of initiatives, one of which is trails and recreation. So that's what that's one of our initiatives that I applied the Fulcrum grant for. So the Fulcrum grant is a projects the WVU School of Davis selects projects to become Fulcrum projects. And what this provides your community with or your project with is a student professor pair. And these are students who come in to do whatever project it is that you would like to have done. There's tons of stuff you can do because there are a lot of just different areas of study at Davis. What I applied for was, or Blueprint applied for, was a walkability and bikeability study of both Jane Lew and Weston. So currently, also just as another update that I believe is important for you guys is Blueprint is working on selecting a firm to complete their feasibility study for a greenway or a trail through Lewis County. And this is going to kind of be like the major spine through the county. So as we're doing kind of that county-wide work, connecting people between places, we also wanted to turn our attention into the population center. So once people maybe come in biking from Harrison County, once they get to Jane Lew or to Weston, when they're in town, can they easily bike around? Can they easily walk around if they're taking the trails or if they're just visiting? So the Fulcrum grant is going to allow both of these communities to receive some level of walkability and bikeability assessment. So we're looking at how bikeable is the community, how walkable is it, what is the infrastructure like, what are our sidewalks like, can we get them mapped, can we get them rated, these types of things. Can we identify really important corridors to and from really important places in our communities? This grant, so it comes with the technical side, you could call it, and then also there are monies that are also awarded for the projects to spend. Changes a little bit last year. I'm forgetting what the number is this year. We also received one last year in the community of Jane Lew, and that one was for $4,000. And I know it went up a little this year. I'm not remembering the exact number, and I don't have it in front of me. So basically, I'm just here to tell you guys about these things that are happening and really, like I said, encourage as much synergy as possible. This summer, there will be, we haven't been contacted yet, but at some point, the students and the professors from WVU will come down to do a site visit. And we would love to have a representative from the city, from your, is it commission? Is it board? What?
Mission.
Commission.
Oh, nice freeze.
Yeah. Gotta take a picture of that.
Was there a nice little feet?
YouTube's gonna have it.
There we go. I'll send that to you.
Oh, really cool.
At least she was happy.
Yeah.
Did she lose connection completely?
Well,
She's pretty even when her face freezes.
Well, she gave us a pretty good overview.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think it'll be a good tool, and I think that anything they do that we can incorporate into the plan will be very helpful.
Yeah, and
I mean,
to have those
walkability.
findings, that might be something that we could present
Absolutely.
in applying for a grant for better sidewalks,
Oh, yeah.
and things like that. We already have a feasibility study, so I think that is important. On that same line item on the grants, the county had just announced that they received the Brownfield grant. Do we have any information on that? Does that mean anything for the city?
One of the facilities was the Pope Creek School, correct, Nate?
Where the paper is.
Yeah.
We haven't really had any kind of
There's
interaction
not.
there.
Really
So at this
collaboration?
point,
At that
yeah.
stakeholder meeting, maybe we can talk to them when we have the county meeting,
Okay,
and the sooner the better, probably on the county one, because that one's probably one of the more important stakeholder meetings to get underway.
I agree.
And then Sherry had told me that the region, the region they have a person that like helps with the planning as well, and she was supposed to send me that info. She did not get the contact of the region. And I guess they help like set up these public meetings and stuff for you. They help facilitate public meetings and stuff at supposedly at no cost, she said, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, the city pays a fee,
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
one of the services that they
It is a fee.
say that
Okay.
they will
Well, we've
provide.
got, we pay our dues. So
Okay.
they get some, we get some.
Yeah.
Well, if there's something we can leverage there, I mean, maybe we don't need them for all of them, but maybe,
Region
maybe when we get to those big official meetings especially. I don't know, or I'm not sure where we can leverage that, but Sherry thought it was a good idea to reach out to them.
okay.
So that was just me reiterating what she had said about that, so.
I guess it just kind of comes down to what are we trying to accomplish there? I mean, I think at this initial stage, we're feeling everybody out and seeing what you're doing, I guess, but.
Well, yeah, I think those conversations that you have with the stakeholders are the same conversations you're having with the public to try to see what they think the needs and what the plan needs to be. I mean, you need to basically get their opinion and see how it fits into the big picture. And I think from the county perspective, I don't know that they've always worked well historically with the city, so I mean, maybe we'll have more data, because there's just not a lot of county data in this plan. Did you guys have a hard time, Bruce, do you recall?
They went through a separate process and had their own comprehensive plan. I think it was dated back in 2014. And as far as I know, it's certainly coming very close to be due for renewal, but I haven't heard anything about
But
it.
they didn't actually kind of work together on
At the
either.
last one, when the
It-
county was planning theirs, they invited the city and the city did not want to be involved.
That's,
They-
I had heard that something went on, that there was just not a lot of,
What they produced ultimately, I mean, they had some help from WVU, not the law clinic, but another professor came down. and helped them. But basically boilerplate, not a very,
nothing you can actually.
not a very, we're ready to go here and start doing some important things. So it was just very boilerplate.
Okay.
They left out, I mean, they left open the question of zoning, saying, well, yes, we could do zoning if we at some point decide to do zoning. But there was no specific plan to actually do that.
Does the commission oversee that, like the county commission oversee that, since they don't have a planning commission, do they oversee that?
They have a planning commission. County
They
has
do?
a planning commission. Well, last time I checked, I don't know to what extent it still exists, but you have to have a planning commission in order to have a comprehensive plan.
Are they required to have a comprehensive plan, or are they, you're not really required if you want to have a zoning, right?
Right, you have to have a comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing, well, not the.
Victoria's back on the phone now, I don't know if you want to try to.
Hey, Victoria,
Hi, sorry about that, guys. There's some
That's
weather
okay.
that's been going on out today, so I just called in. Not sure where I left off, but basically we're expecting a site visit at some point this summer with the students and the professor, and we would just love to have someone from the commission there to have you guys represented to make the most out of this opportunity, I guess, for our communities and really get some good data, really get some good planning, move on and move forward. Any
Okay.
questions you guys have or anything like that, I'd be more than happy to answer.
no, I'm, the results of the feasibility study, I mean, can you share that with us when the results are in?
Yeah, absolutely. We can share those for sure. And there's kind of two things going on. There's the walkability and bikeability study here through, and then there's the the bigger trail piece that we're doing through a different grant with ARC that is going to be much larger in scope. And so both of those, you know, not only we'll share with you, but especially for the larger one, just really interested in having like look at what we're trying to do and see if the alignments make sense and at the bigger picture, because from that larger plan that we're doing, we really want to walk away from an actionable plan. So we would, you know, hate lay down a corridor and assume things, and then maybe the commission is kind of has something different in mind, or there's something we could do to make the stronger. So especially for the ARC grant, I'm interested just to coming back as updated of things. So.
Are you looking for a representative from the city to go to for the ARC grant, be on that committee?
Yes. So yes, we would love for a representative from the city to be on that planning process. And just so you guys know, we're finalizing 5D process right now to select that engineering firm. It's looking like this project will take about 4 months. The firm that is selected, we're asking them to finish it before November. So it's going to be, I guess that's just to give you a time frame, but yes, we would love for somebody, commission or someone from.
What does that commitment look like?
So that's a good question. There's going to be a larger group, and there's going to kind of be a core that we would like to see more involved, because we know schedules. Right? So meetings are going to be held on a weekly to bi-weekly basis, and sometimes those meetings, the engineer, something we call into and basically, this is what we're thinking. Problems. And then there's going to be some stakeholder meetings that will be a little bit more involved. So in a room, really looking at maps and really saying, you know, our priorities, what we're looking at, does this alignment look good to us? What should we out? If this sounds a little general, I'm sorry. The engineer is going to help, you know, a lot of these, what this really is going to look like for us. But in terms of a commitment, it's going to be, you know, weekly to bi-weekly meetings, and then the plan. Maybe out of those weekly and bi-weekly, a month kind of being digging in meeting, and I would plan about an hour, and those other weekly and bi-weeklies will probably just like check-ins to make sure that we're.
Will the majority of those be during the weekdays or the evenings?
That hasn't been decided yet. That'll probably just fit
I can
everybody.
probably help Victoria if you don't have somebody else. I can probably be that person, unless Nate has somebody else in mind who wants to do that, or just let me know what you guys decide. But as long as it doesn't conflict with planning and HLC meetings that already exist, I think I'm good.
Dan, you have any interest in doing it?
I have interest in learning more about it. I don't have any interest in committing to something that I don't fully understand right now.
I need more
Definitely
clarification.
understandable.
And like I said, if
So-
somebody wants to be that person, by all means.
Sure.
And just to give you an idea kind of timeline, so we're the 17th, I believe it is. I can't get my calendar pop, but should be a Tuesday. That's the day that, you know, the commission is vote on their final recommendation.
What did you say, Victoria? The 17th?
The 14th, sorry, the 14th. My calendar just popped up. That's kind of next week. We're getting in hand like the final proposal. The 14th, that'll go before the commission, rather, to be confirmed, and then we'll have like our initial kickoff meeting. So in the next week and a half, I'll have a more clear idea of what that's going to look like moving forward, as far as the time commitment and some of the specifics of.
Okay, well, when you have that information in hand, if you don't care, just to email myself and the city, whatever, we'll, you know, we can address it then. But I think it's really cool. I think it's a good opportunity.
And data we need.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you. Is there anything else that you think would be valuable for us to know?
At this point, those were the two main things, and just kind of looking forward. Part of the impetus to get these, like this walkability study done, specifically the smaller one, when we're talking about blueprint projects, a lot of people will say things like, oh, we'd really like a bench, or we'd really like a bike rack here, we'd really like these things. And it's not really easy necessarily to go out and write a grant for a bench. You kind of have to paint a bigger picture for people of what you're trying to accomplish. And so part of this is trying to get that bigger picture of maybe what we're trying to accomplish for walkability and bikeability downtown, and what we're our trails, so that we can have a master plan that we're working toward in order to get grant monies, not only for the larger things, like, you know, paving trails, bridges that we might need, but also some of the things that are needed, but that are, you know, are overlooked, as, you know, where do we need benches, where would it be, you know, really nice to have. We were just this weekend for my sister's baby shower, and they have these super cool, just like little picnic table / benches. I don't know what you call them, but they basically seat maybe 2 or 3 people, and they just kind of have them everywhere in nice shaded spots. And it's something that you can tell is really planned. And so, you know, I was like, ooh, wouldn't these be nice in Weston? But again, it's not easy just to go out and write a grant for those. We need to paint a bigger picture of those benches and those. So kind of looking to the future, that's kind of what we're trying to lay the groundwork for here.
I think adding these plans as part of kind of the data we use to get to where we're getting to on some of these things, especially because things that didn't get hit in the plan were specifically walkability. They talk about the sidewalks and stuff like that. We didn't cover, you know, that kind of stuff didn't really ever get addressed, you know, like in the facades.
Right.
I mean, it started, like, we're in the process of figuring that stuff out, but in the grand scheme of 10 years, we can't say, oh, we revamped all these sidewalks, or we got a
Right,
facade program in place or anything like that. So
Okay.
having those in there to tie that would be helpful too, with where we're coming up with that information.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you all. I appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Next on the agenda is really just a review on the WV Law Clinic had a land use academy session, and honestly,
It's never been confirmed.
I just being totally new to all of this was really helped by it. So I'm just going to give you 2 takeaways, and if anybody else has anything to add, then that would be good. One, on the difference between like a master plan and a comprehensive plan. And I walked away seeing the need for both in our city. So I think part of the work of the commission after renewing the comprehensive plan would be to work on master plan as well. And then the second thing, there was many things, but the second thing really was the importance of housing. And Nate, you already mentioned it, but I feel like that part of our comprehensive plan and the things that we need to address as a city is just really the need for housing. And there were several resources that was given to organizations that I've been running for that could possibly.
We should reach out maybe to the Randolph Housing Authority as one of the stakeholder meetings that we have, because there are region housing authority. So that would be a stakeholder meeting that we should put on our radar.
Okay.
Just while I'm thinking about it. But what was your takeaway, Nate?
I think that's it. I think maybe I shared this in Kurt, maybe I didn't. I'm gonna share it again, just to make sure. Something I kind of had an epiphany, I guess, for lack of a better word, when the keynote was talking about housing stock. And I've heard that term from realtors a bajillion times, but for whatever reason, I don't know if I read the article that morning or what, but livestock came to mind, and the way she was talking about it was the condition of the housing stock, right? And I'm not a cattle farmer, but from what I understand, you get so many years of productivity out of the cow, and then you put it down, right? You send it off to the slaughterhouse, and it gets butchered, and its usefulness ends at a point. Some point down the line, say for that dairy cattle or whatnot. And I think our housing, we've seen that, right? A lot of our housing has reached its terminus, whether it was bad management, maybe we didn't feed the cow like we should have fed it, take care of it, well, we should have. and the life- Yeah, it's not it. Or maybe, when you talk about cattle, I need to stop with cattle illustrations, but sometimes you just a bad cow was born and you can't make that thing turn into a prize heifer. You just need to call it and send it off to the slaughterhouse. And I think we've got some of our houses inside the city, right? They were just,
They predated building code.
right, they predated, they were thrown up and they served, they got people through, but they're not necessarily houses that you're gonna build a viable stock from, right? You're not gonna breed them and turn them into something better, or you're not gonna remodel them and they're gonna be great, they're just bad. And so that mentality, I guess, and when you have livestock, inevitably, a good shepherd or a good farmer manages that livestock, right? And I think here in the city, our housing stock has just been a free-for-all, for lack of a better word, right? And the city's never taken an interest in saying, we're managing that as an asset like we'd manage anything else. And not that we manage it completely, it's a private piece of property, but we do have some roles in the management of that property to ensure that it gets its full potential reached, in a sense, I guess. So that's just the thought I wanted to share with you. I think that we've really got to look at ourselves as a part of that equation to make sure our stock is strong and healthy and serves all the uses, that we've got not only historic homes that serve maybe that upper echelon who want to do that kind of thing, but also we've got a right mix of starter homes for people who are family forming and things of that nature. You've got your apartments and things of that nature for people who are transient, travel nurses or whatever. All those things have to go into the equation, I think, of what we have as a city. And so I don't have the answers. I've expounded about all my knowledge on it, but I just thought that that's really what I came away from. It was like, man, this isn't a one paragraph answer in our comprehensive plan, right? And I think if you get more people living here, you have more people potentially from a worker pool that attracts businesses here to expand, because there's a clientele of workers that are available, but you also have people who spend money on your local economy. I think it just lifts all boats if we can get houses here. I think there's people who want to move to West Virginia. There are people who want to live in north central West Virginia, but if they don't have a nice house, they're going to pick Buchanan, they're going to pick Bridgeport, they're going to pick somewhere else and commute. And that's I think that's what we're seeing.
Any discussion of a subdivision ordinance?
They didn't really talk about a subdivision ordinance per se, that any of the sessions that I was in, they might have, did they have one? They talked about land use a bit about finding those opportunities of where you could actually redevelop land that's currently lying waste. What I heard, do you have more to add?
Go ahead.
What I took away was very similar to what they took away from the meetings, but I would say that every single community that was there echoed the same issues we have. I mean, we were not alone in the fact that every single one of these communities didn't have a good quality of housing stock. They were struggling with zoning issues, whether they had just implemented them, they were in the process of doing it, and the struggles of how you get from the beginning to the end. The same thing in the Historic Landmark Commission one that I sat through. That one was really informative, and it was, again, we haven't quite figured out all our processes. So it was kind of nice to see that even though we feel like we're struggling sometimes, so is the rest of the state. Like, we were in the exact same boat as all the rest of these communities who are really trying to work hard. And it was nice to be able to see some of the successes and that are maybe a little further along than we are, and then kind of realize that we're not doing so bad, guys. We actually have come a long way. And, even having zoning in place, from, previous administration really doing some of the legwork on that, and maybe some of the, that building stuff that we've got going on, I took away that, like, really we have a very good foundation to build from, and we have a good opportunity. So I took that away from it. I also really appreciated just a lot of the data they gave us, some of the contacts and grant resources. I wrote down several grants that I'm looking into for opportunities that I thought we could either leverage from planning or HLC or just the city in general. I think that from a planning commission, it was 50-50 useful. Like, there were some of the sessions I sat through and I was like, wow, that was Maybe I should have gone to the other session, though. I don't know. I'm sure every conference you go to is like that, but I thought it was very informative. I think I took a decent amount of information away from it, but Bruce, you had asked what it was. It was the land use had put it out. I think they invited the city in general, and then he put out an invite to the entire planning commission and asked the city, basically said that anybody on the planning commission who wishes to attend, the city is willing to cover it, because basically that's what was there. It was planning commissions and cities, and that's really HLC and HLCs. Yeah, several HLCs. And that
Any
was-
discussion of legal developments? I think that was a session.
Yeah, there was a session, and, Bruce, I don't even remember. I got a big pack.
Brian was.
Yeah,
Brian was in
we
the
both-
legal.
We both sat down
Yeah.
together, and they gave us a packet of cases, that was Supreme Court versus Darby or wherever it was, down through there. And there wasn't anything that was super earth shattering, I don't think. But, it's kind of nerdy legal stuff in a sense.
Can I get a copy of that?
Yeah, I'm fine sharing it. I'll have to go dig through my paperwork to get to it. I'll scan an email too. How's that sound?
That's fine.
Is that it?
I think, overall, I think it was useful information. I think that kind of gave us some food for thought. I thought the presentation, even though, it seemed like a big thing here, when I took away from the exercise on the SWOT, it seemed like they kind of made it very small, just a good exercise to like get your planning going and a good way to interject both your opinions and the public's opinions and kind of be able to step back and take away like a good look of, maybe you're not, we all think we know what the problems are. We think it's housing, we think it's whatever. But when you go out there and you have that public meeting, you might be surprised that that might not be what the rest of the public thinks. So I thought that the way they presented that exercise was useful just from the perspective of being able to get a good unbiased opinion of what everybody else thinks our problem is, as well as just those of us who sit in these rooms every day and,
Right.
because we see and we deal with the same stuff over and over again. We may not necessarily think with the different lenses once you put them on in here and you see the same stuff every day, because you're dealing with building code or we're dealing with planning or historic landmark stuff. We're not just necessarily dealing with, the stupid stop sign at the end of the street that's bent and crooked, whatever, right? So.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good session, huh?
Discussion about landmarks commission.
To the comprehensive plans or to just in general?
Just in general.
Um,
planning, zoning.
I mean, they had an entire section on historic landmarks commissions. It seems like we are a fairly active historic landmarks commissions. There was a couple other ones in there that were pretty active. It was interesting to see how they use the certificate of appropriateness versus not using it, and that was enlightening and eye-opening. What I took away from it is we don't necessarily need one, but we do need a process, an outline, like a process that we all understand. I mean, that was really what they took away. A city can go either way. We don't have to have one or the other. The state gives them the wherewithal to do either or, but we do need some kind of process and just to be on the same page of what that process is. But I thought the historic landmark one was a pretty good session. There was a lot of HLCs in there that were pretty active, and then there were a couple in there that were trying to figure out what an HLC was. So it was kind of good mix.
Wide range.
It was a pretty wide range of, and that sort of the question section, I think, went more towards it was clear they weren't even sure what their HLC was supposed to do. So there was that, but I thought the actual informative part of it was really helpful.
Well, I don't know if you guys were in that session or not, where the girl from Princeton was tearing down houses and she didn't even have the building code passed.
You told me that. I wasn't
She
in that
tore
one.
down 50 houses that year. And we're all, everybody, from the law clinic on down, just sitting there like. She's like, yeah, we've been thinking about it. We're like, you might want to think about it.
Before you get in all out of trouble. I don't know.
Well, awesome. Any other comments? We've already set our next meeting date.
The only other comment I have, at least the farmers get rid of the cattle when there's no more use.
Right.
They just don't let them stay and
Sit.
become an eyesore.
Yeah.
And I think that vacant
Swell up,
building
smell, all that stuff. Right?
implode on themselves. I think that
Oh, man.
vacant building ordinance.
I have just seen that happen down at my house. I mean, when Jack and I built it, it was nothing but a cow path, literally. And then people wanted money. They built those apartments down there. and then they leave town, and then they collect their money, and that's all they've done. No one needs to be down there 24/7 on some of it,
Well,
but
Yeah.
it tears down the neighborhoods. And the value of my house has gone down, probably gone down an awful lot now since you don't have my pine trees.
Oh, no.
Not so private anymore.
But anyway, but I think you have to be mindful of the landowners that have tried to maintain their homes. And they don't have any control of what the neighbor builds or anything. Sometimes I think that's where we need, as a group, and especially with your zoning or whatever. I've just seen what it's done to our property down home. And it's sad. Of course, I can see a great big high rise built where I'm at. Be a beautiful place for it, right?
Big zone you're covered now.
After I'm gone.
Yeah.
Won't happen while I'm here, but.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, it's just, I just hate to see homes just left and then nothing happens. You know, nothing gets cleaned up.
I think that vacant building stuff, I don't know, I'm hoping that starts, have you got any pushback?
We haven't sent out the letters yet,
Oh,
but
okay.
they're coming.
Oh, we've had phone calls. They got it in the
Newsletter.
Newsletter.
newsletter. Yeah, got a list for you.
I've got, I mean, I've been summoned by a family member already. And, yeah, what the heck are you trying to do down there to us? Call your council member.
Good answer, good answer.
But, no, I think it's, we're starting at the bottom, right, where there's zero management.
Yep.
So I'm not a central planner, nor do I want to tell people that they gotta live in this, 500 square foot home or anything like that. But I think, we do. You need to have a house that's accessible, right? You gotta keep the roof up, you gotta be able to do work on it. You can't have, you gotta have a little bit of a plan here, to make sure to maintain stuff. We're getting those laws and ordinances on the book to be able to.
People just
more
need to
aggressive.
go back and start taking pride. And
But they
the
don't,
younger generations have lost the family connections and the pride in where they live. And a lot of it has to do, if you rent, you keep it up, I don't need to, if I tear it up, fine. And I think that's a mentality of a lot of it, but,
you could.
I don't know, I just feel like people themselves have to take some responsibility and do some things. And I don't know.
You probably boil down the dilapidated homes to the dilapidated families. And we have a family crisis, and that's not just here, but grandparents are raising
And
grandchildren.
completely off the subject, what happened, I was out of town, I've been in Alaska. What happened to the old barber shop? Did it fall or did somebody actually start tearing it down?
the wall started to buckle, and so we brought in a contractor to bring it down. We didn't want to fall on somebody. So that's.
It was a very last minute plan fall.
Yeah, I mean, it was controlled. We demolished it. Now, when we did do the back on the riverside, that wall had been burned at some point. We didn't realize that. So when they started kind of pulling on it, that split and broke, and that's some of the stuff went down towards the river's edge and then clean up back towards the hillside because it set that off. But it was, part of the property maintenance code. Our code official came in and said, no, this buildings, we can't safety hazard and we kill them. So.
Well, we had heard when we were in Alaska that it disappeared, but we didn't know whether it literally fell.
It disappeared. It's sitting over there in a big pile right now.
How's the testing going?
Yeah, I think we've got a contractor lined up. They'll start early next week to haul off the rubble. When you use those emergency provisions, you're not allowed to just declare an emergency, do whatever you want. So we had to make it safe. So in this case, to make it safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, do we have motion to adjourn a second?
I said it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.